Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to this You Are Enough Summit for Women. My name is Pia Prana Muggerud, and I'm your host for this particular summit. And I am absolutely thrilled to today be speaking with Anaiya Sophia. Thank you so much for taking the time and being open to share, I suppose, just a little bit of your wisdom around this topic of you are enough. And I know that you've called this interview How Much Is Enough? So that's what we're going to be exploring in these next 45 minutes. But before we delve in, and I just also want to give our listeners a little bit of I don't think this will give you any justice, and I would certainly invite everybody to explore you after this interview in depth. But you're a mystic and storyteller, and I know that started from a very early age. And I noticed when I looked at your bio, I think you got 9 books, and we've got things like Womb Wisdom, Sacred Sexual Union, and I think this year there's also Fierce Feminine Rising, which I love the title of. And also I know that you're a carrier of an oral message that stirs. I want to read this because it's so beautiful. That stirs the remembrance of a continuous lineage with a feminine principle. And I love the way you use the word spiritual dignity. There's something about dignity that really touches my heart deeply. And I know you teach workshops all over the world. You hold webinars regularly, and really offering your wisdom and radiance to many women who really need to hear your message. So without further ado, I think it's much better that I hand it over to you now, because you can share so much about what it is you have to offer. So I'd like to start by asking my signature question, which is, what's your personal self-worth story?
Well, hello there, Pia, and hello there, everybody who's here with us. My personal self-love story would be around the body. I get very stir crazy if I neglect this body. And this body here requires a lot of movement. When I was a younger person, I think you would have classified me as a pitter. I was hot-blooded, lots of energy,
Mm,
and now that I'm probably moving more into kapha, I'm slowing down, but I
mm,
still need to exercise this body. It's like my body is a dog. It needs to be taken out for a good run, although I can't run. So it would be around nutrition, exercise, getting out, walking, resting, sleeping. But to say that it's a natural thing for me to do is
mm.
not true. I have to really allocate this self-love and this self-rest and this self-nutrition. Um, yeah, otherwise things start getting a bit cranky.
Mm. And I love how you say that it doesn't come naturally, and I actually you have to be really on it and really make conscious decision every day. And I suppose that's uh, I find that beautiful how you say that, because it's almost like with anything, and obviously with the topic that we're talking about, how much is enough, um, or any kind of inner work that you do. I think there is a confusion that maybe, I'll just read a book or two, or I'll listen to maybe a podcast, and then I will feel better. And I think the inner journey, even knowing, having listened to many of your podcasts over the years, knowing that your journey started many years ago, and for many of us it starts much later in life. And so I wanted to, like you talk about, like a remembrance of your sacred work, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about this remembrance that you speak of.
Yeah, wow. Yes, it's as if when I turn in and when others who turn in, and I say with me because I can only speak from experience,
Mm.
when we turn in, there is indeed an internal landscape, fragrance, presence that, as I was saying in the bio, stirs a remembrance.
Mm.
Oh, and I always say of an almost forgotten faith. And so there's this lovely sort of nostalgia. There's this melancholic longing for something comes up. And I often say, you know, is it an almost forgotten faith or is it an almost forgotten soul? Is it ourselves?
Mm.
But, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that feeling arises and that we spend time in it, listening to it, writing down its messages, moving from it, painting from it. For me, it's definitely, it's a bridge from one world to another.
Mm.
And I believe it wants itself to be taken across that bridge and into the realm of mortals, you know, us humans. And I feel that it also enjoys energy going the other way too. So an offering or two from us. It wants to keep the bridge open.
Hmm. And would you say that there is a sense of, for the mere mortals of us that are listening to this, is there a is there a connection with intuition? Because I know in your work you work a lot around intuition. Would you say around this remembrance
Mm.
that intuition has an important part to play?
Yes, yes, yes,
Mm.
yes. Um, I have a lovely little tale to tell, which you will probably all recognize. But at a certain stage, I do believe all of us, men and women, have an incident that takes them spiraling down into like
Mm.
a pit or a well of suffering. And when we look back, when we have the grace to be able to look back, because the suffering period is over and we're now on the mend, we will most likely notice that a few little red flags were frantically waving at the beginning of the descent, saying,
Mm.
hear me, see me, notice me. And we didn't. We would have noticed, if we really tell the extra deep truth, we would have noticed, but we would have gone on regardless. Maybe telling ourselves a story that with enough love and enough patience and enough money, everything's going to be different. But when we notice, oh my goodness, the red flags were being waved from my intuitive self, then that's a lovely invitation to return to the intuitive self with a deep apology and a very humble and dignified asking for forgiveness. And what I've noticed, and what I've noticed all around me as well, is that intuitive part of us magnifies after that tremendous humble apology.
Mm.
So it's not as if it's like, I'm waiting for you to apologize before I work again. No, no, no. That's human nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just wants a gracious acknowledgement from us and then a deeper unveiling occurs.
Mm. I mean, I certainly recognize the kind of dark night of the soul, I guess you can call it, even for
Yes.
myself. And I mean, that's many, many years ago now. I guess, yeah, it was 20 years ago. But looking back, of course, there was just one alarm bell after the other.
Yeah.
And I just kept on pushing through, just like if I just keep going more or harder or faster, or whatever to finish that sentence.
Yes.
And in the end, it was, I actually went into depression as a result.
Yeah.
And of course, out of then going through that deep, dark tunnel almost, and suddenly it's like space to breathe again when,
Yeah.
that was my experience at least, but I see that I had to go through that. That was part of my journey.
Yes.
And I suppose for so many of us that just aren't necessarily inclined or haven't learned to pay attention in such a way, right?
Mm.
We are taught very much to live externally.
Yes.
And value everything externally. So how would you advise our listeners? How could you hone or sharpen this connection so that you start noticing, oh, there is a bridge,
Yes.
and there is a voice inside that's actually speaking to me all the time.
Yes.
How might you shed some more light on that?
I would say we are edging our way towards a world where we will indeed be spending 50% of our activities externally and balancing that with 50% internally as well. And the world will be productive, and there will be a society, and we will be quite a different kind of being. We might be able to come to this balance point by grace because we watch little snippets like us having a little chit chat now, and we learn, and we grab our journal and our pen, and we start making our sacred space in our own homes, and we start going there on purpose with a sense of consideration and opening and welcoming to the inner. Or we might get there, sounds like you got there the same way I got there, which was the dark night of the soul, where we are thrust upon by life itself, and there's no softness, there's no tenderness, there's no grace apart from when we're on the inside. The external is now incredibly brutal, incredibly aggressive, lonely, and desperate. And so what it does is it forces you inside to where you start, nursing this nectar, this comfort, this love, this healing. And then the inner just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you're in balance. This pandemic that we've been in with our restrictions and our lockdown, this is a taste of that. The outer world, for some, has gone away, where we can't go outside of our house. So we're being, again, sort of like edged in towards the inner. And when the restrictions do lift, we will be, if we took our medicine, we will be a different quality of person.
I love how you say that. It's like if we took our medicine, if we really take heed, because for many people, I suppose globally, people are more restricted now at the time of this recording than what we are used to.
Yes.
And things like spending more time with our families that we wouldn't necessarily do, but also spending more time with ourselves. And we can go down the route of I suppose adding more addictions to our plate because we only have this space that we're inhabiting that might give us what we need, or like you call it, this sacred space that's right here, right now.
Yes. I'm starting something tomorrow. I'm starting something tomorrow. It's called ambrosial yoga. So it's in the dark. The ambrosial hours is the hour that contains both light and darkness. So tomorrow morning, before the crack of dawn, I'm going to do darkness yoga, which simply looks a little bit like this. Okay. So there's no instruction. you just wait for a little prompt from the inside. How do I need to move? You know, rather than okay, everybody inhale up, exhale over. No, none of that. You just wait. You wait and you listen. What does my body need? Ah, yeah, it needs a side stretch. Oh, and in the darkness, it's amazing. And this is so healing. This is so somatic. It's deep, intuitive body movement work.
And I suppose that also you've opened up a topic now around just this deep wisdom that actually is in the physical body.
Yes.
And again, we're working, many of us were just working our body to the ground in a sense, the growth at all cost, as when you work in companies, and when you actually stop, and the body doesn't just tell you, okay, I'm like, for example, now I'm noticing that there's a little bit of a tightness just at my hara, just below the belly.
Yes.
And instead of just going, oh, I might have indigestion, or I might, I ate too much, but actually going, okay, well, if I just sit with this for a moment, what is it wanting to tell me? And it sounds like that's kind of what you're doing with ambrosial yoga. Is that what you call it?
That's right. The ambrosial hours. Ambrosial means sweet nectar that you would give to the gods. So it's like we are the sweet nectar. We're gonna, I'm gonna set the alarm at 4 a.m. and I will be here. And that's my sweet offering. Can we stretch that far into believing? And this is a question to me. Can I really believe that I, in my over 50 self, is a sweet offering to the gods? That's a stretch. That is a stretch. But I do also know at some point during the practice tomorrow, I will feel the answer to that as being a yes. But my normal self would not believe that for 1 second.
No.
But by the time you get in,
the steps. You have to get to bed early today. Like your sacred masculine has to get a little bit more structured, and I've got to put the alarm on.
Yes.
I've got to have everything ready, so there's no it's, and I suppose also with any inner work, with our honing the sacred space, or honing our intuition, it's like you said, it's like we've got to take the time to either get our journals out, get up early because at 7 your kids are getting up, or whatever, or you have to go to work, whatever your situation is. You have to actually engage also your sacred masculine to bring that direction so the things get done.
Yes.
And that magical dance, I suppose, can allow you to then, by the time you finally sit there at 4 a.m. Then everything is in place and you can really just go in and listen intently. Yeah.
And what's so amazing is my mum, my parents now live with me. So at the end of July, they took a quick leap of faith and moved from the UK to France, where they're living with myself and Pete. And this is how it's going to be. We're going to remain as a family unit until, if ever, this pandemic disperses. So I'd rather be, well, of course, I'd rather be with them, looking after them, than them trying to sort of figure all this strange things out for themselves in the UK. So my darling mum, who is approaching 80, is also going to be sat with me tomorrow morning for the ambrosial sacred space.
And what I
How
love about that
amazing.
is that, there might be listeners here that are going, well, I'm just a beginner and I'm already 60 or 70 or 80s, like your mom.
Yeah.
And it's like that remembrance, anytime
Yes.
it's available, right?
Yes.
When you
Yes.
are ready.
Yes. That's
Or
just,
in my case, I wasn't necessarily feeling ready at the time,
yeah.
but there was only one way to go, and that was down into that darkness
Mm.
where all sorts of things became apparent.
Yes.
Because of course there's I know for myself growing up just thinking that everything has to be light, everything has to be happy, and that's the only value that is something that then I can be in the world and be loved and be accepted. But then going down into that darkness and the light that then appears,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but you have to trust it, kind of like what you say about your yoga tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
All you can do is just open yourself up and trust.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I guess coming back to this topic of how much is enough, I think sometimes it can be, or perhaps I'm just projecting because this is something that I've struggled with, is that trust of I'm okay and I'm taken care of and life is on my side.
Yes.
I think that is can sometimes be difficult, especially at a time like this when it seems like life is not on your side.
No. No. No.
Because everything we look outside and everything is telling us the contrary, that everything is scary. The world is a fairly violent place these days, right? And
Yeah.
so I wonder, looking at trust and intuition, or fear and intuition, or resistance and intuition. I know that often I've found it hard to know the difference. So maybe you can shed a little bit more light about, as our listeners start opening up to the idea that yes, the intuition of the body, the soul is within me, but then all these other things come in the way.
Yes, yes. That's always been one of my big questions. How do I know that this is not resistance or wisdom? And I would say at the beginning, I did not know. I did not know. But again, in hindsight, there is particular qualities that come with both. For me, when I'm in a resistant state, I'm angry, I'm bitchy, I'm most definitely judgmental. There's a feeling of withdrawing, I'm cold, heart's closing. When it is wisdom, when it is wisdom being whispered from the other world, that sort of edgy part of me is not present. So the seeing is very clear, heart still open. If there's another person involved, the connection is still there. But all of that edgy, scratchy behavior is not present. And in hindsight, and it's probably taken me 20 years to be able to distinguish between these two. I think it just takes patience, it takes practice, and it takes noticing, of course. Step number one is to notice I'm in a resistant state, or hang on a minute, my intuition is speaking up about this situation. Let me just pause here and listen. Huh, okay. That's step one, and that is a mighty step.
And I suppose what I'm reflecting on what you just shared is that when because I can very much relate to, I get into judgment and edginess and just not feeling, and in those moments it's so attractive to do that. And I'm just, his, it's my beloved's fault, or he's not how, or it's COVID, or it's the government, and it's so easy to then relinquish self-responsibility. And I think this is a thing that is probably another pandemic, is actually to if I can call it that, is not being willing to say, actually, it starts with me.
Yes.
That self-leadership in a way is like, is another way I feel to really say, okay, it starts by noticing. And perhaps even the step before that would be, even before notice, is having the intention to start listening and noticing, and opening that up as well.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous words.
Yeah. And I suppose the book that, where's the name of your book here? Fierce Feminine Rising. I just want to bring that up because inside of all of this, I'm feeling like a tenderness, there's a softness, and at the same time, the fierceness that is also required, I think, to allow this alchemy to move through you is absolutely necessary. But for some listeners, kind of fierce, or that might sound a little bit scary or not very feminine. So I'd love for you to bring this into our conversation and how that fits into our conversation about worth and also intuition.
Well, I would say that the fierceness, I've felt it my whole life, especially around animals. It started once when I was a kid in the New Forest in England, which is a forested area with ponies, New Forest ponies. They're able to roam freely. And we were all camping, and I noticed that some boys had a catapult and were catapulting the ponies, trying to hit their bottoms to make them run. So up it came, up came this fierceness, and I just barged in there and broke the boys up and just shouted at them not to do that to the ponies. But then I noticed as I got older, especially into teenage, because now it's all to do with appearance, hormones are pumping. And I noticed that I could still feel my fierceness, but now there was like a little bit of a gag around my mouth. It never came out anymore. I felt I couldn't. It wasn't right. I ought not to. And that bothered me a lot. And as I went through my 20s, I got into some really compromising positions in the sort of Me Too genre of things, if you know what I mean. And that fierceness did not come up again. And I was super compromised many times. I could hear the fierceness, I could feel it rising, but it did not seem to go beyond this point. It never came out like it did when I was a kid. So then comes the dark night of the soul, late 30s, early 40s. And only when I was writing Fierce Feminine Rising did I realize that the dark night of the soul was to find the voice. Was to find a voice and simply not care less what anyone might think of my responses in the name of protecting the innocent, the undefended, the animals, the wildlife, the ones who can't fight back. Yeah, so a very big and tender and gorgeous journey, and there is a heck of a lot of tenderness because it's my heart, it's my heart that's feeling all of this, and I don't mind at all how much more tender it gets. I don't care about being naked and vulnerable and seeing and hearing and smelling all that must be seen and noticed that we're doing as humans. And from that nakedness, from that vulnerability and tenderness, the voice just gets stronger and louder. And what I now realize and want to say to you ladies and guys listening, it's not a harmful voice. It doesn't want to hurt the one that's the perpetrator. So those boys that were catapulting the ponies, I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted to make them stop. And then I'd be quite happy to be friends with them, you know, stroll over to their camp half an hour later. Hey guys, by the way, my name's Julie, that's my birth name. You want to play? That's why I love and know that this is a divine expression. Because there's no residue, there's no anger. It's not right, okay, I'm not friends with you anymore because I've just done sacred rage at you. No. You're still a human, you're still beautiful, you carry light, you are love, yet you have done a despicable thing.
Yeah. It feels almost like Goddess Kali, you know, who's like out there to just obliterate anything that is not true.
Yes.
Or for perhaps also the mothers who are listening, who have maybe just had that fierce moment when their little child is about to walk out into the street where cars are driving, and out of that absolute love comes the fierceness of just nothing is more important in this moment. It really touched me what you said, and especially because I think, and again, my own personal story around having permission to speak my truth, to speak up, to speak out, to trust that I'm not just allowed, but whatever I have to say is important.
Yes.
Even if there's a disagreement from the outside world.
Yes.
So I just wonder how can we give ourselves that permission to speak up, to speak out, to stand in that dignity of our truth?
Gosh. Well, the way I did it was seeing the videos I didn't want to see. That was a very, very big step for me. I watched a documentary called The Land of Hope and Glory, which is factory farming in the UK, made by a gorgeous, gorgeous young man with a very, very big heart. I didn't want to see this. I didn't want to see this. I was avoiding it. But I knew that my permission was in there. I can't sit in meditation and go, okay, you now have permission to speak out and speak up, because I know just how tight that throat grip was that said, you must never, ever make such a spectacle like that in public. So I knew that the one who's going to take that hand away was in fact the eyes of those cows, those pigs, and those chickens. And Pia, oh my gosh, what a thing to sit through. That was what did it. That was what did it. That was the huge piece of liberation I was seeking for, and it came through the animals. That level of emotional response to sheer horror. It's like only at that level of intensity can we take away those blockages, you know, those be quiet, you must not, you know, thou shalt not hear, see, speak, you know. When it's that real and that honest, then all the little padlocks and closed doors that we have on ourselves just fly open, because it's the heart. The heart suddenly awakens.
And would you say that watching that documentary was like the catalyst for your voice in general? Because with that fierceness of what you felt and needed to communicate in response to that, it opened up all the other channels also.
Yes.
Mm.
I'm quite a I can usually hold my own. If I'm in a cathartic moment, I can hold my own. With this, watching that documentary, I was making the strangest cries and squeals and sounds that I have A, never heard before in my life, B, couldn't believe that they were coming from me. It couldn't help. It couldn't help but free that voice completely. So, being in my own home, watching the documentary on my own laptop, and it was just a moment. It is time now to just let this throat splutter open. And it was a spluttering.
Yeah.
I was coughing and gagging and retching and just making primordial sound.
And it's interesting you should talk about primordial or sound in general, because like for those people that are familiar with the chakra system, of course the throat is where everything is the most narrow. So as we're wanting our energy to rise, this is where a lot of stuff gets stuck, right?
Yes.
And I'm kind of mindful of our time, and I kind of just want to delve in anyway, even if we don't have massive amounts of time anymore, because you also work with sacred sexuality.
Yes.
And this piece, of course, is an important area of liberation in that area. And I know you speak about the threefold flame. I don't know if we have so much time for you to go into lots of detail, but perhaps start with this, then connection of kind of claiming, as we open up this area, how then that can also influence other areas, like one of your areas is sacred sexuality.
Well, I would say the threefold flame is a beautiful way of seeing life, seeing the other, seeing yourself, and applying to absolutely everything. And it's the reminder that we are made of three equal components. We are a soul, we are a body, and we are a heart. And that includes all of our nearest and dearest. And it also includes all the circumstances and situations we find ourselves in. And so with sacred sexuality, particularly the era we're in now, it would be very, very wise, very, very fulfilling, very, very healing, very, very comforting and blessing, that when we come into an environment of sacred sexuality, even if it's just, speaking beautiful words to one another, gazing at one another, a very deep and meaningful kiss, and going all the way to a penetrative act. But just make sure those three parts are with you. Your body's clearly here. Hello, I have a body. It is here. Is the heart here? The big heart, the agape, the worshipful heart, not just the romantic heart, the full heart. And is your soul here? Your breath, which carries the breath of life, which carries, another breath of life, another breath of life. You are here, you are alive. That is what we would be very wise to be bringing in to the sexual and sensual act. And even when we're with our own self, going perhaps into a sensual, somatic dance, movement, healing, breath work. The same loose awareness is the threefold flame, the threefold aspect of myself here.
And yeah, I so want to delve so much deeper into this. We have a few more minutes, and I suppose coming back to, you know, we've touched now a little bit on the sacred sexuality, and it's such an important topic. And with really having all those three flames, as you call them, here and now. And I can imagine, myself included, that there have been many times, many times, where I have really gone past my boundaries, and in the arena of sexuality, and you know, how to then almost like, as people are becoming more conscious, as for example we're listening to this series and looking at worthiness, forgiveness around the things that we didn't know any better at the time. So when I look back for myself, it's like, you know, going through the motions, or looking for love in the wrong places, and then coming back to, how can I really forgive myself for things that at the time I didn't know any better? And it doesn't have to be sexuality, but it's also entwined here, but anything, I guess.
Absolutely. Yes. The same with me, Pia. When I look back, it's like, oh God. Forgiveness is very essential. The journey I took was that to make my heart a persona, to make my womb a persona, and even deeper still, making the yoni a persona. So these are not bodily parts anymore. They are friends, they are part of me, they have a persona, they have a character. And so either with the spoken word or the written word, I would ask for forgiveness whilst touching, and even, you know, the yoni and the womb, which at first can seem strange to touch that place. But I can assure you, all you beloved women out there, it doesn't take very long before those well overdue tears are starting to fall down your beautiful cheeks, because the sincerity now is rising up and you are speaking it. And we're seeing how discompartmentalized we probably were. That, you know, the yoni, that's just a thing over there, you know, that has sex. And what we're doing is we're recapitulating, we're gathering everything back to wholeness, to oneness, to fullness. And like all dearest, best friends, that apology goes a very, very, very long way. And there is an instant response and an instant coming back together again. And I can assure you, a line will get drawn into sand by yourself, and you will not trespass it. You might trespass it a little bit, but that's just to see, oops, I've overstepped the line. And there will be a time where you just do not trespass that line again, because dignity has come back. You know, I think that was the word you opened it up with, spiritual dignity. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Beautiful. So I'm afraid that I'm not afraid, but our time is up. And before we finish this beautiful, beautiful interview, I would like to first invite you to let our listeners know where they can find you.
Well, you can find me if you just type in my name into any of the search engines. You'll find my website, anaiyasophia.com, and all the usual social media places. It's quite easy, really.
Yeah, you've got lots of wonderful videos on YouTube as well. So I urge
Yes,
everybody to,
lots of material.
yeah, you're very generous in all your offerings there. And also, speaking of generosity, you also have a free gift that you're offering to our listeners. So can you just let us know briefly what that is?
Yes, it is a transmission. So it's a recorded piece of audio with atmosphere that just takes you on a very healing and deep and trustable and gorgeous journey into all of those places we've spoken about today. And I think it'll probably be about an hour long.
Wonderful. Wow. It sounds perfect to, I suppose, allow everyone to integrate and embody the words, and then they can really allow that now to go really deep into the heart, the soul, the body. Beautiful. So thank you so much for not just your generosity of your gift, but also for taking the time to meet with us here today. I know that you will touch so many hearts. So thank you so much to you. Be well. And for everybody else listening, also be well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.